So, Justice League comes out tomorrow, and in the process of building up for that, I decided to watch Batman vs Superman again. And I think Batman vs Superman, when it came out, had a lot of hype surrounding it, but then actually disappointed a lot of people and is touted as being a really rubbish film. Not even just, oh, it's an alright film, it's this was rubbish. And I think I feel inclined, having watched it again, to defend Batman vs Superman. So I'm going to. Obviously, spoilers are going to be involved in the process of this video. So if you haven't seen Batman vs Superman, then watch it and or be prepared. It's going to be ruined for you. I'm going to talk about 3 potential problems that people have with it, and say why I think all 3 of those problems are unfair. And then I'm going to talk about what I think probably the ultimate problem with the film is, and where that leads to problematic scenarios I can imagine might be happening tomorrow when I see Justice League. So, the first problem that people have with Justice League is that it's too serious. And quite simply, this is stupid, because DC Comics have proven that if you try and make a film really entertaining, it doesn't necessarily make it good. Because Suicide Squad is full of jokes and it's total toilet. And yeah, sure, Marvel Studios are really good at adding in gags and jokes and the family-friendly fun element, but that's what Marvel Studios do. If you look at plenty of other superhero films, such as Logan, in fact, most of the X-Men films, if you look at the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, if you look at some other previous Batman films or Spider-Man films, a lot of those films take themselves very seriously and are trying to create kind of a dark elements to the superhero world, and yet they all pull it off spectacularly. So I think it's a cop-out to say that Batman vs Superman, just because it took itself seriously, because it was quite dark and because it didn't have very many jokes, it wasn't good. In fact, to be honest, I wish that DC would stick to what they know, because at the moment it feels a bit like they're trying to be too funny to play up to the masses. So that's number 1. Number 2, there were issues with the way some of the characters were portrayed. So Batman, for instance, as much as people seem to think Ben Affleck was a good Batman, there seem to be quite a lot of issues with the fact that Batman is so grisly and kills and tortures people. I think we have to give DC some benefit of the doubt with this, though, because the problem is that this is an older Batman, and from the comics, Batman does get older and darker as time goes on through his story. And I think, there's been hints at things like Robin at some point has been killed. There's been some history with other villains. We're going to hopefully find out some of that in the extended universe. This is clearly a Batman who is war-torn, who is cynical, who is dark, who is angry. And I think that the fact that he kills people, to me, was a shock. And the fact that some elements of his character aren't what we're used to was a shock, but I think it's coming with a context, and I think maybe one of the issues we're having is that we're starting in the middle of the story, and that the DC Universe do have prequel origin films lined up for us, where we're going to see some of the trauma that's happened, which has caused Batman to be who he is. I actually think this Batman suits the mood of Batman v Superman really well. And then the other one was Lex Luthor. And I love Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's a fantastic actor. I think he made The Social Network from what was an alright film to being a really brilliant and captivating film because of his performance. And the thing is with Lex Luthor is that the guy wants to kill Superman. So he is a little insane. And I know, again, it's not his madcap Lex Luthor. To be honest, trying to make Lex Luthor a little bit more like the Joker maybe felt a bit misplaced, but I also kind of feel like it's good to be different. So that didn't really upset me, but I don't really have a lot to back it up with, so I'm just going to move on. The final thing that really winds people up about Batman v Superman, in my head, seems to be the plot. And the plot is silly and convoluted and blah, blah, blah. There is one part of the plot which I'm frustrated with, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. I think there's 2 things to say. I think the first is that a lot of the manufactured tension between Batman and Superman, I'll give you, is manufactured, because Batman's reasons for hating Superman are a little stretched because Superman does do a lot of world saving and he doesn't actually do a lot of innocent lives getting killed in the crossfire, although it happens. But Batman is personally invested into the disaster that Superman specifically causes. Not necessarily the one where he saves Lois Lane and all of the African people die, but more the destruction of like Wayne Towers and the people he knows who have been killed and affected by Superman defeating Zod. Like he's engrossed into that. He's personally invested into that, and that is going to make him sour and angry. And Superman's hatred of Batman is because Batman, as he becomes sour and angry, has started to go against his codes. And to Superman, who's a man of real principle, that's really frustrating. Now, take it another way. In Civil War, the tension is started between Captain America and Tony Stark because Captain America doesn't like Tony Stark because Tony Stark keeps seeming to go against his principles and doing things like creating Ultron. And Tony Stark doesn't like Captain America because when Captain America does things to save the day, he doesn't care, or seemingly doesn't care, that there are casualties involved, and Tony Stark is the one who is getting the blame for those casualties, such as Ultron. So, the tension there is still manufactured because at the end of the day, shutting down the Avengers is absolute stupidity and a total manufactured plotline in order to get the Avengers to fight. And Batman v Superman has some stupidity to its tension so that we can have Batman and Superman fight. But at the end of the day, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't sit there and say Marvel get everything right and Batman v Superman was stupid for the exact same reasons that they were good. Like, yeah, sure, Marvel have a bigger fan base and can take some more risks and had this massive fight between all the superheroes, but there's no stakes involved because at the end of the day, it's family-friendly fun. None of the main heroes are going to die, and it will all end up okay in the end. And this is trying to do something that's maybe darker and maybe different. Maybe. We'll see. I'll get to that. And obviously, the other thing that upsets people is the fact that Batman and Superman seem to reconcile their differences over the fact that their mums have the same first name. And that's been given a lot of credit because Batman is about to stab Superman and he's about to kill him, and then Superman says, "You're going to kill Martha," and he's like, "Why did you say the name?" And it just all gets all Martha this, Martha that, and yeah. Initially I was thinking, yeah, this is really silly, but watching it again, I think the thing we've got to bear in mind is that the reason that Batman hates Superman so much isn't necessarily because Superman allows civilians to be killed in the crossfire of his actions. I actually think the reason Batman hates Superman is because he sees no humanity in him. He's just some alien who's come and started dictating things, started ruling the world, everybody's at his beck and call. We actually don't have a way of stopping him, so if he were to turn evil, we couldn't help it. And Batman's anger at Superman is all based on the fact that he can't relate to Superman. Superman's totally other. And when he finds that Superman has a mother, sure, a mother with the same first name, but you have to have something like that because that's what triggers Batman. When he sees that there's humanity to Superman, that there's actually a person in there, that's when Batman stops, thinks, and goes, hang on, who's the real monster? And at that point, that's when it becomes obvious that Lex Luthor is. And I know Doomsday then rocks up and becomes the real literal monster, but let's forget about Doomsday. Actually, at that point, but if there's maybe the problem is maybe we are as an audience are just being too stupid. Like they're trying to imply something, and we're just looking at the surface level. Your first names of your mums are Martha. How stupid! And if we're looking behind what they're trying to say through it and how they're trying to get that reconciliation, it makes sense. And potentially you could have ended the film 15 minutes after that revelation and wrapped it up and had things like Lex Luthor hanging in the balance a bit and waited for that for Justice League, and maybe that would have been better. But I don't think we can just say it's stupid because the mums are called Martha. Because I think the whole point of it is that starts to change Batman's mind because he sees something about Superman he hadn't seen before. And when he shows mercy, Superman sees something in Batman that he didn't think existed, because he thought Batman was dark and vile. And once they start seeing the good in each other, that's when they start wanting to work together. And at the end of the day, Batman is a superhero. And if an innocent woman is in danger, he wants to rescue her. And they put their differences aside. And that's when, and then Superman sacrifices himself and Batman starts to see it. And I don't think you can simply just say, oh, they're mates now because their mums have the first name. I think if you're doing that, you're giving the film no credit and you're just being some, bandwagon critic who's refusing to see beyond the surface of what the film was trying to do. To be perfectly honest, right up until the Granny's peach tea scene, I think the film was brilliant. I don't think you can fault it, to be perfectly honest. I think that it's, as a superhero film, there's ridiculous elements to it. Some of it's a bit extreme, some of it's a bit manufactured, but what superhero movie isn't? Bear in mind what you've come to see. You've not come to see Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. You've come to see a superhero movie, and if it was a Marvel film, you wouldn't care. I'm talking to the critics. But, at the same time, it's not a perfect film, and I think the reason is that DC just try and throw too many eggs into one basket. Think about it, they're changing some of the characters, they're throwing things around with Batman's character, they're trying to set up the Justice League, they're trying to introduce Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman didn't need introducing in that film. You could have had Gal Gadot kind of wandering around, keeping tabs on Batman, you could have had him work out who she is, but I think her actually literally turning up as Wonder Woman. Why? Why give us that now? We're about to have an origin film in 6 months' time or whatever, or a year's time. Let us see her then. And let us see her in Justice League. It's not like we're not going to have enough Wonder Woman. You can't just rescue a film by throwing all of your eggs into the basket. We have Wonder Woman turn up, we have Doomsday, so we have this great big monster, because I almost feel like the film didn't trust that what Lex Luthor was creating between the two of them and the moral dilemmas that he was creating between the two of them wouldn't be enough to sell the film. But actually, I think the great big literal monster at the end just makes the whole thing ridiculous. And if Doomsday didn't exist, or if Doomsday was saved for another time, when you had the Justice League to fight him, maybe without Superman, and then Superman saves the day later, I think that would have been better. And I think you almost have to let Batman and Superman take centre stage in this one, and let the film be about moral decisions, not great big set piece fights. And I think, the other egg they throw into the basket is by killing Superman. And, everybody knows that in the comics there was the death of Superman, and it was a great big thing because he was indestructible. And, we all kind of know that he's going to come back. But the thing is that he's, by setting up the Justice League, by throwing in as many characters as they can into the film, by switching things around a bit, by making the film 2.5 to 3 hours long, by throwing in Doomsday, Lex Luthor, literally, it's like they've tried to give us absolutely everything that they have to offer all at once, and they don't need to. So I think that in the end, the film does itself a disservice by trying to do too much. And if it had just kept itself to just over 2 hours and made the whole thing about Batman and Superman with little hints of the fact that the Justice League was going to be set up. And yeah, sure, maybe Superman dies, and maybe from that Batman becomes motivated to begin the Justice League with Wonder Woman because he's worked out who she is. I think that would have been great. And then you could have led it to the origin film of Wonder Woman and now into Justice League. And I think, save Doomsday. Keep Lex Luthor in the picture. I think there's ways in which they could have done that without, they've ended up just throwing everything in. And I think it's almost given us too much and felt ridiculous. And in there is actually a good film. So I'm going to say, quite honestly, I think that Batman v Superman is a 7 out of 10 film. I think the acting is really good. I think the direction is pretty cool. I think it's no sillier than any other superhero film I've seen. And it's got plenty of incredible scenes. Like the scene when Bruce Wayne is hugging the girl, looking up at Superman. The scene when he comes in to rescue Martha. Some of the fight scenes, like one of the dream sequences when he's fighting all the bad guys and killing them, and then he gets captured by Superman. The car chase with Superman comes out of nowhere and crashes the Batmobile. You name it, there's just so many excellent scenes, excellent set plays, excellent little bits of the film that just get lost in the fact that people have got so critical of one or two elements. And to be perfectly honest, I almost think that we're kind of throwing the baby out of the bathwater, because it's a superhero film. They're a bit silly. They're not always very believable. And maybe because DC have made so much of what their plans are, we are holding them to too high an account. So my advice would be, don't take Justice League too seriously. Enjoy it, and maybe you'll come away feeling like you've had a more fun time than you would have done if you're expecting some 10 out of 10 wanderlust. So that would be my advice, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from me very soon about some more of my thoughts going forward.